So after this beautiful greeting by the ambassador, we're back in business talking about gender smart finance this time and how we can unlock an inclusive and sustainable future for all. I have the pleasure of welcoming here, I'm no longer alone on the panel. I have Alice Korovessi, Managing Director of INZEB, next to me. Thank you for joining us in person to Delphi. Now, we have Jessica Espinoza, CEO of 2X Collaborative. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here.
Okay, perfect. We have Adenike Oladosu, who is an eco-feminist and founder of I Lead Climate. We recently featured an article by Adenike Oladosu on Athinea, and it actually gave Stella the idea to invite Adenike to the forum, and it's a real pleasure and honor to have you with us, Adenike. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
And last but not least, we have Elena from the Ministry of Labour and a close colleague of Ms. Syrengela, Minister Syrengela, who was not able to join us today, unfortunately. But we're very, very happy to have you on board, Elena. Very nice to see you.
Great honor to be here. Thank you.
So you know, I would like to start with a question to Jessica, actually, on why inclusive finance is such a key component of rebuilding this post-pandemic world, and a little bit more about what inclusive finance means to you.
Thank you. So if we think about systems of finance, it's and I think the pandemic has made that particularly clear. Systems of finance really shape the world we live in. So if you want to rebuild a more inclusive, equitable, sustainable post-pandemic world, inclusive finance plays a crucial role. How we allocate capital, how we invest, make financial decisions has a huge impact on economies, on societies, and communities. The COVID pandemic has also really put a spotlight on existing inequalities and has further exacerbated inequalities as well. So, we can think of gender inequality, the digital divide, the inequality gap between rich and poor, but also racial inequity that has really surfaced during the pandemic. And it's not that these inequality, crises haven't been present before, but they have been really made visible by the crisis and have also been further exacerbated by the effects of the crisis. And the pandemic has also put a spotlight on the care economy and women's unequal care burden, the finance and support gaps for women-led businesses, for example. Women have lost their jobs to greater rates than men, and also gender-based violence has skyrocketed in times of the multi-dimensional crisis. So if we apply an intersectional lens to that, we also see that beyond gender, the impact of COVID has really disproportionately impacted underrepresented and overlooked groups more broadly. And this makes it very clear that the post-pandemic recovery must look very differently from business as usual. And again, systems of finance play a key role in unlocking the potential of gender and climate smart investing in order to rebuild more equitable, inclusive, and more resilient economies going forward. So for me, in this context, inclusive finance really means looking who has been, what are the barriers and the biases that are inherent in the traditional financial system and also in our economic system and our economic models, and how can we collectively use the power of finance and of the private sector to overcome those barriers, really look at who has traditionally been overlooked and underrepresented and hasn't benefited, to the same extent as others from financial systems, and how can we then leverage the power of finance and really the positive contributions that investing with a gender lens, a climate lens, and an SDG focus can have to build a better post-pandemic world.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And I find it very interesting that you touch upon this idea that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women. It was an issue that has been touched upon today quite a few times. And getting to you, Alice, my first question to you is the following. We have the pandemic disproportionately affecting women. What about energy poverty, and what about the climate emergency? Can you talk to us about the key effects, the ways in which women are disproportionately affected in these areas?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again for this question. I will start with what was said in 2012 by Marianna Skylakaki. She was a British conservative MEP and also member of the Committee for the Women's Rights in the European Union. She said that climate is the same both for men and for women. When it rains, we both get wet. So is there any difference between that? Actually, there is not, because definitely we get wet. But the recent literature actually shows that there are the climate crisis is gendered somehow. And according to the data that are available at the moment, it seems that because of climate emergencies, the displaced citizens are 80% women. So that means that we have there are negative effects, and there are effects that are tailored. Actually, they are focusing on women somehow, and children, of course, the vulnerable ones. We do not have more information about what is happening because we have not seen the huge negative effects of the climate emergencies yet, because we are expecting them in the future unless we take action now. When it comes to energy poverty, and this is actually a domain that I'm working since 2015 and still working, and even though many people are working on that, we see that the rates of energy poverty are increasing, not only here in Greece, but in Europe, but everywhere in the world. Yes, again, women are the ones that they are most affected. I will start again with some statistics because numbers never lie. In Europe, in European Union actually, we have approximately 55% of 55 million citizens that they are affected by energy poverty. They are victims of energy poverty. Considering that we have a population of 500 million at EU level, 10% of citizens are affected by that. On the other hand, we have more than 100 citizens at EU level that they are affected by energy poverty during the hot months. And we saw that many deaths are happening, not only in the north part of Europe, but also in not only the south part of Europe, but also in the north. From all these numbers, because they are huge numbers, women are the ones that they are most affected. And this is why. This is because women are actually the ones that they are paid less. Just statistic, 2017, women were paid 17% less than men, which is a gap. Pensioners over 65, women were receiving 30% less pensions and money in comparison with men. So again, we can imagine what is happening on that. At the other, 98% of the single-family houses are coming from women, and 48% of them, they are under the risk of poverty, meaning they are also under the risk of energy poverty. And last, as a fact, because of all these things, and because women are managing actually the families, and they need also to take care of other things as well, apart from what's only about their jobs and their career, it is that they are working for less and also working less time than the other citizens, like men. So we understand that all these inequalities in money and payments, in job finding, in career, let's say, pursuing and everything, definitely those things are related. So we have increased rates of citizens that they are affected by energy poverty that are women.
Mm-hmm. So women are increasingly vulnerable to these changes that we're seeing happen all over the world.
Yes.
And what I wonder is how the gender agenda and the gender equality agenda intersects with the sustainability agenda. And I have a question to Adenike on this. Adenike, you call yourself an eco-feminist, which is a very, very powerful and interesting term. I would like to ask you to explain to us what an eco-feminist is, and also how equality for women is linked to the fight against global warming.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'm very honored to be here today to share with you on this platform, talking about the fact that I'm an ecofeminist, and I find it that there's a connection between environmental degradation and the rise in violence against women and girls, coming from a place where we are disproportionately affected by the climate change crisis in Nigeria, where we have seen the massive adoption of school children, especially girls. And just to bring you back to what happened in 2014, the international outcry that led due to the adoption of the schoolgirls in Chibok, Borno State in Nigeria, that led to an international outcry of bring back our girls, because those girls were to be medical doctors, technicians, electricians, be a change makers in their society, but to a certain extent, they there might not it might be a point of no return for them because they have been deprived of their rights, because some of them, they are still in their custody for those in the hands of their adopters. So you could see different ways at which the climate change crisis is affecting them. So when I searched through, I found that there is this massive cage in Lake Chad, which connects Nigeria, Cameroon, and Central African countries, that is disappropriately affecting 40 millions of life of people that depends on it. And so, due to the fact that it has shrunk, then it becomes a very big issue that leads to massive child brides. Just as in the Sahel, in the Lake Chad region where I am from, we have about 20 million child brides, and the COVID-19 have compounded the issues and it's making it to become a matter arising, because while we were in the COVID lockdown, we saw increase in violence against women and girls because their livelihood are very fragile, and at the time the informal economy, whereby we have majority of women there, they have also lost track of it, or they have lost their livelihoods, and then the natural resources which they depend on so being now there's rise in conflicts through the farmers and other men's conflict. And so it's a very big issue for women and girls. And that is why I see that there's a connection between environmental degradation and women's rights, that for every violence against women and girls, there's always an environmental issue that is linked to it. Just looking at the fact that I got a figure on a research that talks about that in every day, women and girls globally spend 200 million hours in collecting water. And these are natural resources that are depleting. So women have to trek as far back as like 20 kilometers in a day to see that they're able to get cooking water to stabilize their family. At the same time, afterwards, try to look for firewood, which are unsustainable, to see that they try to make their family to be stable. So all of these things affect their health, affect their ability to contribute towards economic gain, affect their ability to also contribute towards environmental stability conservation, because all of those time constraints that they use to get water, firewood, and other things, it affects the economic gain. It affects their ability to be educated, because at some point the girl child will have to drop out of school due to poor performances, because when she comes back from school, she's trying to walk around the streets to get money for the parents, or at some point they want to use them as a survival strategy for them to be giving out.
I think we have some connectivity issues
Family crisis
with
is
Adenike.
decimating women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you have all given us a very, very good idea of the problem. And I'd like to try and move into the solutions area of this discussion. And I have a question for you, Elena, on what gender smart finance can do for all of these topics, and also how the state can play an active role in this process.
So I'd like to start by thanking you on behalf of the Deputy Minister, Mrs. Syrengela, that she unfortunately fell ill this morning, and she would really like to be with you. Gender smart finance involves learning how to better integrate gender into investment and finance processes to make smarter choices that enhance returns, gender equality, and women's economic empowerment. However, integrating gender insights into finance processes is just smart, since diverse teams exhibit stronger returns and is correlated with higher profitability, innovation, value, sustainable growth, and lower risk. And at the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs, we are going to achieve that by gender-based factors throughout the financing process to inform our decision and ensure we allocate capital to intentionally advance gender equality. So to begin with, our National Action Plan for Gender Equality 21-25 aims at a holistic approach of gender equality policies, including actions on gender mainstreaming, which is undoubtedly necessary and is fully in line with crisis management strategies, in the sense that the inclusion and integration of diversity always brings better results. We are working on equal participation in decision-making processes and labor market, and on combating, of course, gender-based violence, which are all prerequisites for a fuller female participation in climate change and policies and programs. So we plan and implement policies aiming at closing the gender gap in the labor market, the pay gap and the pension gap, supporting families and work-life balance, enhancing childcare facilities, combating violence, as I said before, supporting female entrepreneurship, and promoting education and training women and girls in ICT. Greece is prioritizing women's economic empowerment with gender-sensitive green recovery policy measures, focusing on green skills, training and economic activities related to a circular economy. For example, one of our proposed programs within the RRF is the Green Jobs Initiative, which aims to support the transition to a green economy by subsidizing the creation of 5,000 new jobs at businesses with an emphasis on unemployed women. Another example that I just can think is that we just launched the Innovation Lab for Women, based on the UN model for sustainable development, aiming at supporting and promoting female research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. These are just a few examples that how the government, the state, tries to use gender as smart finance.
Thank you, Elena, and it's truly very, very positive to see all of this range of initiatives. There is little we can accomplish without the help of the government on this matter. But I would like to kind of switch the discussion, focus a little bit more now on what the private sector can do, and ask Jessica a question on gender lens investing. What is gender lens investing, and what do you hope to achieve through it? It is something that you do through your organization.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we've already heard from Elena that it is about integrating a gender lens or gender analysis into financial analysis when you make investment decisions. And I think it's worth reflecting or sharing a little bit of background on the 2X Collaborative and how we were thinking about gender lens investing in the early days, and have since developed the 2X criteria as a global industry standard specifically for the private sector, but it's now also increasingly adopted by the public sector. So we started with a joint commitment at the G7 summit in 2018 with initially the development finance institutions of the G7 countries that are investing in the private sector in emerging markets. And so we gave ourselves the challenge to look at our core business, add a gender lens, and allocate at least 3 billion by the end of 2020, so in a little bit less than 3 years. We then had to define a framework. So what are we actually talking about when we say gender smart investing or gender lens investing? What does it mean for private sector investments across all kinds of asset classes, geographies, sectors, different types of businesses? And so we developed the 2X criteria, which define gender lens investing as looking at one of 5 criteria, ideally all, but as a starting point, one of them is sufficient to satisfy the definition. And that is looking at entrepreneurship. That's the first criterion. So looking at women as business owners and founders. Then second criterion, leadership, looking at the representation of women in senior management and on boards. The third one focuses on quality employment. So the share of women among employees, but also importantly, adding a quality factor. So also looking at workplace policies and practices and the extent to which they promote gender equality and women's career advancement. And you can think about pay equity, career advancement policies, targets to create the pipeline, or like to build that pipeline of women that can go into leadership over time, and so on. The fourth criterion looks at products and services. So we know, for example, that traditionally products were often developed based on a male prototype. So if you think about cars, for example, the reason why women are much more likely to die in car accidents are because cars have traditionally been designed based on a male prototype. And so we're looking at how products and services are designed. We heard, for example, from Adenike about the fact that women and girls still spend millions of hours globally on collecting water or firewood, right? So for example, if we think about time-saving devices or gender-smart infrastructure that can reduce the drudgery of women and women's and girls' time poverty and other negative effects, that would be a gender-smart product or a service. And then the fifth criterion looks at investments through financial intermediaries. So for example, when we invest in financial institutions or in private equity, venture capital funds, to look at the criteria that I just mentioned, both at the institution itself and also at the portfolio level. These criteria have since been integrated into existing standards and frameworks. So for example, if you are familiar with the OECD DAC gender equality policy marker, that has been aligned with the 2X criteria, as well as other international frameworks. So it's really been adopted widely because it has been integrated with standards that the private sector worldwide has already been using. What we aim to achieve is really to transform systems of finance. So the idea is not to make gender lens investing as a new niche, but to make it the new normal, so that whenever you make a investment decision, whether you're in private equity or in private debt or in public markets, that you add this gender lens and look at how your investment affects gender equality, how it affects men and women differently, and what you can do to structure the project in such a way that it has a positive effect on gender equality. We also have a strong intersectional lens with climate. So as you may have seen, the 2X Collaborative launched a gender-smart climate finance toolkit at COP26 in Glasgow that really shows the connection. And I love how Adenike has framed it. We see such a strong nexus between gender equality goals and climate goals. And we fundamentally believe that we cannot achieve gender equality without tackling the climate crisis. And similarly, we cannot achieve climate goals without focusing on gender. And so we have developed this toolkit to show investors very practically across different sectors how they can make their climate finance more gender smart and make deliver on both goals and just make the investment much more effective. So ultimately, the idea is to be much more intentional and to bring the gender and climate lens into the mainstream of investing.
Thank you so much for sharing these criteria, Jessica. I think if money was invested, capital was invested using these criteria, we would be looking at a very, very different world in just a few years. So it's very, very important to keep these in mind. And now talking about this intersection between the climate goals and the gender goals, we do have a roadmap right now towards sustainability. That is, these are the SDGs of the United Nations. They are a compass. I wonder how greater gender equality and initiatives in that direction can help us achieve the bigger picture of these SDGs.
Definitely. So whatever it concerns the domain of my expertise, because I cannot talk about all domains, definitely, and this domain is energy, and mainly the social aspects of energy poverty, energy democracy, energy justice, energy communities as a vehicle. We are very well connected with the SDG 1, I think it's poverty, the SDG which is related to climate action, gender equality, and I can share again some data because, as I said, numbers never lie. There are many SDG goals, many goals actually, that they are connected to these domains. Let's start with Greece. It is unbelievable that having almost 400 energy communities in 2019, and now we have almost 1,000 energy communities, less than 3% are women in the boards, and 3% also women that are part of the energy communities, as member of the energy communities. So this is something that needs to be examined, why it's happening and why women are not part of that. And on the other hand, this is exactly the same situation at EU level. I cannot speak for other parts of this world because it's not in the areas that I'm examining, actually. That's why RISCOOP, which is the EU Federation for Energy Communities and Energy Democracy in general, they are actually examining why and how we can engage more women in the energy sector, not as STEM part, I mean, not as engineers or, let's say, scientists, because we have a lot of women in this domain. Why women citizens are not active in initiatives that are related to energy? Because we need to consider energy as a social good. For me, it's the same social good as with the water. Everybody needs to have access, so no discrimination between poor or rich, women, men, vulnerable, and everything. Whatever is related to financing, because we need to finance and to provide the guidance to women to be more engaged and to receive all the benefits of being engaged in such initiatives and activities. It was said earlier by Mrs. Soko, I think, that we need to invest in awareness and education, not only focusing on the generation set. We are in an energy transition road. No one should be left behind. If we want to achieve the overarching goal of the EU to have a climate neutral continent and to be the first one by 2050, so we need to pay attention and to focus on education. And this is not only education at policy level or enterprise level. We need to go neighborhood level, local level, regional level, because the context and the needs are totally different. We cannot discuss the same with women being, let's say, in a village somewhere in the north part of Greece, and with women that they have their careers and probably they have access to more information being based, let's say, in Athens or Thessaloniki. So everything that needs to be decided at policy level, which will reflect to educational level, needs to be tailored according to the needs of each part. I can share an example of how women are working on that without receiving financing, and this is a self-financed project. Last year, we took the decision to develop an energy community. We consider energy communities are a tool to energy democracy, and when we're talking about energy democracy, this democracy, we're talking about inclusion per se for that. So we managed 60 female founding members to develop an energy community, capacity of 1 megawatt in the north part of Greece. The project is already ready, and now we are proceeding to our next second megawatt, again the same area, and by the end of the year we will accomplish the third one. And we are considered to be a good example, best practice, not only in Greece but also EU level. We did not receive finance from, let's say, governments or from incentives or subsidies or whatever. It was self-financed by the members. And the members are coming even from we have handcrafters to hotel owners. So we are promoting inclusivity, even such in projects and in activities that need to have more women on board. So taking and concluding on that, there are examples that can be replicated. All, and when I say all, I mean the governments, national, regional, local, civil society organizations, NGOs, academia, whoever is considered to be a major stakeholder or a main stakeholder, they need to take action together, to work together, to identify the opportunities and to promote, let's say, the inclusion in energy-related issues, because we need to fight all the emergencies that are coming because of the climate crisis, and also we need to fight and address the energy poverty, which is a problem that is discussed for more than 50 years, and every year all these rates are increasing. I am afraid actually to see the numbers next year because of the energy crisis that we're facing since September, all the rates are increased.
It's a very bleak picture, the one that we're seeing, and initiatives such as yours really make it seem a little bit lighter. I'm sure that the financing gap that exists hopefully will not exist for much longer. Projects like your own, even though it was self-financed, this
I'm
particular...
not very positive, actually.
No, but if you were to look at it through the gender lens that Jessica proposed earlier, financing would have been made available for projects such as this. So let's hope to see more of that in the future. You touched upon education, and my next question to Adenike is on the topic of education, how education can factor into both the fight against climate change and the fight for gender equality. How is it the bridge that we need to get to where we want to go? Sorry, Adenike, can you hear us? I'm afraid we may have lost...
It's frozen.
It is frozen. Okay, so I suppose I will move on to Elena. This is a question for you as well. What the role of education can be in this initiative, but also what kind of Greek, I'd like a bit more information on the green policies that your government is actually bringing forward at the moment.
So, as I said before, education is crucial of our gender equality plan 21-25. We aim to educate young girls and women on, as I said, entrepreneurship, on new skills, on ICT, on management, on every skill that they will need to be as competitive as men and to give them the opportunities as men. Because of course, we do not lack of skills. Women don't lack of skills. We have the same skills, but we don't have the same opportunities. So to talk a bit more about our initiatives, we are focused on our innovation lab for women, as I said before. That is very important to us to give many opportunities to young girls and to focus not only on ICT but on STEM. That, as you know, most girls tend to avoid the STEM field as it seems to be difficult for them or tends to be perceived as more men's field. And then we focus on connecting gender equality with the green transition. As I said, the SDGs UN goals, goal number 5 is gender equality, and we are trying to achieve all these goals. And of course, we plan our education program around equal human rights, equal rights for men and women. And we believe that without education and without boys and girls know about that they are the same, they have exactly the same rights, we cannot move on as a society. We cannot put women in decision-making processes. We cannot put women in leadership positions, and we cannot achieve having the vision of women in all crisis management processes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Elena. I think we have time for just one more question that I'd like to pose to all of you, and that is, what role do you see for women in particular in this sustainability journey and in the fight against climate change? Adenike, can you hear us? Would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me now?
I think we can. Yes, we can. Now we can hear you.
Okay, come on. The in sectors, so it's not just all about environment because it's now affecting everything. We now need gender sensitive approach in finance, in energy, in environment, as a catalyst, they can act as those people that could be able to connect us to platform. They can act as a form of a platform for other women to be able to support their activism in different ways. They can act in a form of providing finance, through financial support, to be able to step up women leaders different ways. because we have women organizations, but then they need support for them to be out their activities. Just like when we have women that have indigenous, from my activism so far and from my organization at I Lead Climate, where we have support from UNDP to this fertilizer, and then we find out that this they are ready to change their behavior to see that they're sustainably carrying out their activities in different ways, because we know women that they have this knowledge, they have the solutions, but what they need is a platform. But due to the fact that there's environmental instability, it distracts them from their ability to contribute towards environmental conservation, towards including their indigenous knowledge. And so the ways at which we could help women to be able to connect is when we provide them with the resources through, through access to resources, to land. And that is one of my major main advocacy too when it comes to women, because I found out that without right to own a land, they would not be able to have access to resources such as education at some point, such as fertilizer, seeds, and other things that they need for productivity. And we know that the demand for agriculture is high for food production, because it's something we can't do without it in a daily basis. So from sub-Saharan Africa, I saw research that talks about women that could produce 60 to 80% of our food production. So you could imagine if women are not given the total access to own a land. So it could become a game changer for us to be able to multiply productivity, to be able to become a solution multiplier, because when they have access to land, benefits for them to be able to have access to loan facility could be able to help them to step up the action that they need for them to be able to bring up climate smart agriculture, for them to be able to grow more trees, for them to be able to grow more long-term crops, for them to have productivity, for to also increase their financial strength and also their bargaining power as well. So this could also help women, to serve as a platform for women to be able to connect, to become solution provider for their community. Because why they get all of these materials that they need in their community, it affects their ability to contribute towards economic gain. So we need to see women to be able to be in leadership power. Through that means it's going to become they will become a change makers. And that is why I am always I always acknowledge the fact that when we leave women behind, it affects economic development. It affects every areas of our development issues, and because for every of those people that are left behind of women, it's like taking us back from achieving our sustainable development goals. And because I'm a girl, I'm a woman, and it could also help to become a change maker, because where I am, I'm also a change maker, and I'm also providing solutions to my community. So you could imagine how much more if we have different women that are in school, even as a land, just as I am, it could help to improve different areas of our sectors. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable perspective and giving us this idea of what would happen if women were given these resources. It could lead to a watershed moment for the climate agenda as well. Jessica, some parting remarks from you on this topic. What's the role of women in this struggle?
Yeah, I would like to really echo what Adenike just shared from kind of the perspective of women and her movement. And if we bring that together with the investor side, it's really interesting now that we have this data on the business case. We see investors talking about exactly the same, right? So, for example, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations calculated the effect of what Adenike just described, that if women today, women farmers have the same access to resources and agricultural inputs that men already have today, 150 million people worldwide would be lifted out of hunger. So it's unbelievable how we can unlock these ripple effects by focusing on women and gender equality. And it has an effect on hunger, so poverty alleviation, obviously gender equality, obviously climate impacts, positive climate impacts. So it's really, I think my call to action is to really see SDG 5, gender equality, as an extremely important goal in and of itself, but also as a lever and really the potential to unlock all of the other SDGs. It's really an enabler, and that's also how the SDGs were developed, to make that also a cross-cutting kind of catalyst for all the other SDGs. And again, if we can see the business case and the impact case and bring it together and work with all of these women that Adenike just described as agents of change, we can really have very powerful solutions. And that's what we're trying to do at the 2X Collaborative, to connect the dots between climate activists and women entrepreneurs across emerging markets, but also now really across the world, with investors and with the capital that is looking for these opportunities.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And female empowerment as a catalyst for much more than this is a very powerful message to end our panel with. Elena, some brief parting thoughts.
So I would like all of us to remember that women and girls are not just victims of climate change and environmental degradation, but they're frontline first responders and key agents of change in relation to both mitigation and adaptation. Studies show worldwide that when women are uplifted, sustainable and local economies grow, population stabilize, children's health and education level improves, and all of these are foundations for a sustainable economy for the future. So we need women in leadership positions. I say again, we need women in decision-making processes. Our skills, our visions are important, and guaranteeing an equal role for women in sustainable growth. It's not only fair, it is also environmentally, socially, and economically responsible behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elena. Alice, over to you to close our panel today. Any very brief?
Yes, everything was said already, so not...
Would you like to add something?
Not a reason to replicate. Yeah, I will just repeat what I said in the previous question. We are in an emergency, climate neutrality by 2050 or earlier. So in this journey to energy transition, no one should be left behind. And everybody needs to work towards this direction.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very, very, again, powerful message. We have a climate emergency ahead of us, but we have had this issue of gender inequality for far too long. So there's two emergencies colliding, and we need to do more, and we're doing more, I think. And initiatives such as this one today show us that we can achieve a lot. Thank you all for joining us for this panel. Thank you.
Before you all go, just a couple of closing remarks. So thank you everyone for being here today. We really hope you are leaving this room with knowledge and insights, and more importantly, food for thought. Thank you so much to the team of the US Embassy in Athens. It's such a pleasure and honor to always work with you. Thank you for the support. Thank you to the Delphi Economic Forum for hosting us, and looking forward to working with the team, but every one of you here today and attending more Inclusivity Lounge. Stay tuned, we will have more news about that in the future. And in the meantime, please join us outside for networking drinks to get to know each other better, and also maybe ask questions and provide answers that we didn't have time to before. Thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you.